The last thing I remember before everything went dark was the smell of rain on hot asphalt and the sound of someone screaming my name. I was 31 years old, a senior financial analyst at a firm downtown, married to the most patient man I have ever met, and completely unconscious on the floor of a parking garage while my mother was at home helping my younger sister pick out a new nail color for a date. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Claire, and this is the story of the day my family showed me exactly who they were, and the night I finally decided to show them who I had become. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. My parents never had to remind me to do my homework, never got a call from school about my behavior, never had to bail me out of anything. I studied hard, got a full scholarship to state university, graduated with honors, and landed a job that more than paid my bills by 24. My younger sister, Dana, was the opposite. Not in a malicious way, at least not at first. She was just the one who needed more. More attention, more money, more patience, more grace. And my parents gave it to her, every single time, without question. I told myself that was okay. Some kids just need more runway to find themselves. What I didn't tell myself, what I refused to see for years, was that every time Dana needed more, I got less. Less of my parents' time, less of their concern, less of their presence at the moments that mattered. My college graduation, my parents left early because Dana had a fight with her boyfriend and was a mess. My promotion dinner, my mother spent 45 minutes on the phone with Dana because she had overdrafted her bank account by $63 and needed my mother to transfer money immediately. My wedding rehearsal dinner, my father arrived an hour and a half late because he had driven across town to help Dana jumpstart her car. I stopped keeping score at some point. Or I told myself I had. My husband, Marcus, kept asking me the same question over the years. Why do you keep letting them do this to you? And I always gave him the same answer. They're my family. That's just how they are. He would nod, and he would let it go, because he is a good man, and he understood that some wounds people have to touch themselves before they believe they're real. The morning of October 14th started like any other Thursday. I drove to work, sat through 2 meetings, ate lunch at my desk, and was walking back to my car in the parking garage at the end of the day when my vision suddenly went sideways. It wasn't subtle. One moment I was fishing my keys out of my bag, and the next the concrete was coming up to meet me, and the keys were somewhere I couldn't find them anymore. I had been having headaches for 3 weeks, pressure behind my left eye, sometimes a low hum at the base of my skull. I had chalked it up to stress. I was in the middle of a major audit at work. I was sleeping badly. I had skipped my annual checkup for the 2nd year in a row. Marcus had told me twice to make an appointment. I had said I would. I hadn't. What I didn't know, lying on the floor of that parking garage while a stranger knelt beside me and called 911, was that I had a cerebral venous thrombosis, a blood clot in one of the veins that drains blood from the brain. It is the kind of thing that, when caught in time, is very treatable. When it isn't caught in time, it is the kind of thing that kills you. The paramedics reached me in 8 minutes. I know this because Marcus told me later, when he read the incident report. I was semi-conscious when they loaded me into the ambulance. I could hear voices, but I couldn't make my own voice work. I had my wallet on me, my ID, my insurance card, and my phone, which was locked. At the hospital, the ER staff did what ER staff do. They stabilized me, ran preliminary scans, and reached for the emergency contact information on my hospital intake form, the form I had filled out 2 years earlier when I'd come in for a sprained wrist and never updated. Here is where I made a mistake that I will spend the rest of my life explaining to people, because it sounds impossible when I say it out loud. Marcus's number on that form was his old work cell, the one the firm had issued him before they switched providers 18 months ago. He had a new number. I had the new number in my actual phone, which was locked and which the hospital could not access. The old number, the one on my intake form, went to a disconnected line. My parents were listed as secondary emergency contacts, which meant when the primary contact could not be reached, the hospital called them. My mother picked up on the second ring. I know what was said in that call, because a nurse named Patricia, a small woman with silver hoop earrings who would later become one of the most important people in this story, was standing at the nurse's station and heard both sides of the conversation. She told me afterward, Word for word, what happened. The hospital told my mother that her daughter had been brought in by ambulance, that she was unconscious on arrival, that they needed to notify family and reach her husband, and that if my mother had a way to contact my husband or could come to the hospital, that would be extremely helpful. My mother said, and I want you to hear this clearly. Oh. Okay. Is she dying? Patricia told me she had to pause for a moment when she heard that. The hospital explained that I was serious but stable, that they were running tests, that they needed someone to come in. My mother said, the thing is, her sister is having a very hard time right now. She just got a citation for running a red light, and it's $112, and she is absolutely beside herself. Can this wait a few hours? $112. My mother asked if my medical emergency could wait because my sister was crying over a $112 traffic citation. The hospital told her it could not wait. My mother said she would see what she could do and hung up. Nurse Patricia immediately went back to trying to reach Marcus. She found his LinkedIn, found the name of his firm, called the firm's main line, and reached his assistant. His assistant called his new cell. Marcus was in a client meeting 40 minutes away, and he was out the door before the call had ended. He reached the hospital in 37 minutes. I know this because he told me he ran 2 yellow lights and is not sorry. While all of this was happening, my parents did not come. My mother called my father. My father called me on my locked cell that the hospital had placed in a bag with my other belongings. The call went to voicemail. My father did not call the hospital back. He did not call anyone else. He and my mother decided, together, that they would wait until Marcus arrived, and then check in. My father arrived at the hospital 3 hours and 20 minutes after that first call. Marcus had been there for 2 hours and 43 minutes already. He had spoken to the neurologist. He had signed every form that needed signing because he is my husband, and that is how next of kin works when you are a married adult, which apparently needed to be stated out loud. He had called my best friend, Renee. He had called my office to let them know I wouldn't be in. He had done everything, alone, while my parents were at home managing Dana's feelings about a traffic ticket. When my father walked into my hospital room, I was awake. The medication was working, the clot was being treated, and the neurologist had told me that because they had caught it when they did, the prognosis was very good. I was going to be okay. I was lying in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm and a monitor on my finger, and my husband sitting in the chair beside me, holding my hand. My father walked in, looked at Marcus, and said, "Why didn't you call us sooner?" The room went very quiet. Marcus has a particular kind of stillness that comes over him when he is genuinely furious. He does not raise his voice. He does not move quickly. He becomes very, very calm in a way that is somehow more frightening than yelling. I had seen it twice in our 6 years together. I was seeing it now. He said, quietly, "The hospital called at 5:17 p.m. It is now 8:39 p.m. I was here by 5:54 p.m. I have the timestamps if you'd like to see them." My father started to say something about traffic. Marcus said, "You're welcome to stay if Claire wants you here. But I need you to understand something. I have already spoken to every doctor. I have already signed everything. I have already handled everything. There is nothing left that requires you. You chose to be here at this hour. You made a different choice at 5:17. My mother started to cry. I watched her cry, and I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been unstable for a long time. Something that finally found the position it had been trying to settle into for years. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you stop hoping something is different than it is. I said, "Mom, why didn't you come?" She said Dana had been really upset. I said, "Dana is 27 years old. She got a traffic ticket. I was unconscious." My mother said it wasn't that simple, that Dana has anxiety, that my mother couldn't just leave her. I said, "Okay, just okay. Nothing else." My father asked how I was feeling. I told him I was fine. He asked if there was anything they could do. I said no. My mother asked if she could stay, and I told her I was tired and I needed to sleep, and Marcus would call them tomorrow with an update. They left. My mother cried the entire way to the elevator. I heard it through the open door. After they were gone, Marcus looked at me for a long moment. He asked if I was okay. I said yes. He asked if I meant it. I said I wasn't sure yet. He said he would be right here regardless. I closed my eyes and I listened to the sound of the monitor and the IV drip, and my husband breathing in the chair beside me, and I let myself feel the full weight of what had happened. I stayed in the hospital for 4 days. Dana texted me on day 2. The text said, "Heard you were sick, hope you're okay." No punctuation, no call, just that text, at 11:48 inches the morning, between what I could only assume were other more pressing activities. My parents visited once, on day 3, for 45 minutes. They brought flowers I was allergic to. My mother talked about Dana's situation for 11 of those 45 minutes. I know because I counted. When I came home, I was quiet. Marcus gave me space. Renee came over and brought food and sat with me on the porch, and let me talk or not talk, whichever I needed. I mostly didn't talk. I was processing something that didn't have clean edges yet. The thing about a moment of clarity is that it doesn't automatically tell you what to do next. It just tells you what's true. What was true was that my parents had been given a direct, explicit opportunity to show up for me in a moment of genuine crisis, and they had chosen not to. And the reason they had chosen not to was a $112 traffic ticket and my adult sister's ability to regulate her own emotions. That was the truth. I couldn't undiscover it. Over the next 6 weeks, I started to pay attention to the other truths I had been carefully not looking at. I had been sending my parents $300 a month for the past 4 years, since my father had taken early retirement. This had started as temporary help while they adjusted. It had never been renegotiated. It had just continued, quietly, like a subscription I had forgotten I was paying. I had paid Dana's car insurance for 2 years because she had a rough patch. The rough patch had lasted 26 months. I had paid it without discussion, without question, without even really thinking about it. I had lent my mother $800 the previous spring for a home repair. She had mentioned paying it back twice. The money had not appeared. I did not add this up in a resentful way. I added it up the way a financial analyst adds things up. Carefully, objectively, to understand the full picture. The picture was clear. I was not a daughter to my parents. I was a resource. Marcus and I talked about it for 3 evenings in a row. He didn't push me toward any particular decision. He asked good questions. He helped me think clearly. What did I actually want? Not what was I supposed to want, not what would keep the peace, not what would make everyone comfortable. What did I, Claire, actually want? What I wanted was to stop. Not to cut my family off dramatically, not to deliver a speech, not to make anyone feel guilty. I just wanted to stop doing things I had been doing out of obligation and fear and habit, rather than out of love. I wanted my choices to be real choices. I wanted my marriage to come first. I wanted to stop funding a dynamic that was slowly draining me. The conversation with my parents about the monthly payments was quiet. I called my father on a Wednesday evening and told him that I was adjusting my budget following the medical expenses and that the monthly transfers would be stopping after the end of the year. I told him I loved them and I wanted to have a relationship with them, but that relationship needed to look different going forward. My father said he understood. My mother called back 20 minutes later and cried for 35 minutes and told me I was being selfish and that Dana needed me and that after everything they had done for me, I stayed calm. I said I understood she was upset. I said the decision was final. I said I would talk to them when everyone had had some time. Then I hung up, and I sat on the kitchen floor for a few minutes, and Marcus sat down next to me, and we didn't say anything at all for a while, and it was okay. The event happened in February, 4 months after the hospital. My firm has an annual awards dinner. It's a formal thing the partners host it. The whole office attends, plus family. That year, I had been nominated for Analyst of the Year. Marcus and I had been going to this event together for 5 years. Renee always joked it was the one night per year I was legally required to wear something other than blazers. I didn't mention the nomination to my parents. We were in a quiet period. They hadn't called since November, and I hadn't called either. I wasn't angry, exactly. I was just living my life. What I didn't know was that my mother had called Renee. They had always been friendly, and Renee, not understanding the full situation, had mentioned the dinner and the nomination. My mother had apparently told Renee how proud she was of me. Then she had called my office, spoken to the receptionist, and somehow wrangled 2 spots at the event. My firm has a no outside guests policy for non-partners, but my parents had done a very good impression of grandparents attending a school play, and somehow, it had worked. Marcus and I walked into the ballroom that night not knowing any of this. I saw my mother first. She was standing near the bar in a green dress I didn't recognize, talking to one of the junior analysts. She looked up and saw me, and her face did something complicated, guilty, and hopeful at the same time. I felt Marcus's hand tighten slightly around mine. My father appeared beside my mother. He was smiling, the kind of smile that tries to preemptively forgive itself. I took a breath. Marcus leaned down and said quietly, "Your call, completely." I nodded. I walked over to my parents. I was polite. I said hello. I said I was surprised to see them. My mother said she had wanted to support me, that she was sorry things had been difficult, that she hoped we could talk. I said, "Tonight is not the time for that conversation, but I'm glad you're here," and I meant it, actually. Not in a warm, everything is fine way. In a this is going to be useful way that I couldn't have articulated in that moment. The dinner was lovely. The food was good. Marcus charmed the table. I kept my parents at a cordial distance, not cold, just measured. My mother kept finding excuses to touch my arm, to smile at me, to perform the role of supportive parent for the audience around us. I noticed it. I let her. When they called my name for Analyst of the Year, the room applauded, and Marcus stood up immediately, which made me laugh. And I walked to the front of the room where the managing partner handed me a very handsome crystal paperweight and shook my hand. I turned to the microphone. I had not planned what I said next. I want to be honest about that. It wasn't a speech I had rehearsed. It wasn't a revenge fantasy I had been composing for months. It was something that came from a very quiet, very clear place. And once it started coming out, it came out completely. I said, "Thank you. I want to say that this job, this career saved my life. Not metaphorically. In October, I collapsed in a parking garage and was taken to the hospital with a blood clot in my brain. I was unconscious. I couldn't make my own calls. The room was completely still. The hospital reached out to my emergency contacts. My husband, who was 40 minutes away in a client meeting, was there within 37 minutes. He handled everything. Every single thing. He didn't sleep more than a few hours that night. I don't know if I would have gotten through that without him. I looked at Marcus. He was very still, and his jaw was tight, and I knew him well enough to know he was working hard not to cry. My parents were also contacted that evening. They live 14 minutes from the hospital. They arrived 3 hours and 22 minutes after the first call, when everything had already been handled. I heard a shift in the room. A small collective exhale. They didn't come, I said, because my younger sister had gotten a traffic ticket that day. $112 traffic ticket. And she was upset. I paused. I'm not telling this story for sympathy. I'm telling it because I spent 31 years believing that love and obligation were the same thing. That if I was useful enough, reliable enough, present enough, the people I loved would extend the same to me. And this fall I learned, very specifically, in a hospital room with an IV in my arm, that that's not how it works. I looked out at the room. My mother was sitting perfectly still, her face unreadable. My father had his eyes down. The people in this room showed up for me this year in ways that my own family did not. My team covered for me while I recovered. My manager called to check on me every week. This firm gave me short-term leave without a single word about my deadlines. Family is the people who show up. I picked up the crystal paperweight. So, thank you. This means everything. I walked back to my seat. The applause was different this time. Slower, fuller. The kind that means people are actually feeling something, rather than just being polite. Marcus took my hand under the table. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. My parents left before dessert. I saw them go. My mother stopped near my chair for a moment, and I thought she was going to say something, but she didn't. She put her hand briefly on my shoulder, just rested it there for 2 seconds, and then she walked out. My phone had 14 messages by the time Marcus and I got to the car. Most were from people at the firm. One was from Renee, who had apparently watched a live stream that someone had posted. 3 were from numbers I didn't immediately recognize, people from my extended family who had somehow already heard. There was one from Dana. It said, "Why would you do that to Mom and Dad?" There was nothing from my mother or father. I read all the messages in the car while Marcus drove. He didn't ask what they said. He put on the playlist we listened to on long drives and let me be quiet. It has been 7 months since that dinner. My parents called 3 weeks afterward. We had a long, difficult conversation that I won't describe in full because some things are private even when the rest isn't. My mother cried. My father said things he had clearly been holding for years, some of which were fair and some of which were not. I said things I had also been holding, as calmly as I could manage. It was not a clean conversation. It did not end with resolution or forgiveness or a group hug, but it was honest. The first genuinely honest conversation we had had in probably a decade. We are figuring it out, slowly. On new terms that I dictate now rather than inherit. I see them once a month. I answer their calls when I am able and I don't when I'm not. I no longer send the $300. I no longer pay Dana's insurance. I no longer loan money that is not repaid. Dana and I are not close. I think we may not ever be close, and I have made my peace with that. Marcus and I updated every single form that asks for an emergency contact. His cell number current, correct, tested is the only number listed on everything. I also made sure Renee has it. I made sure my office has it. I made sure every single document in my life reflects the reality of who is actually going to answer the phone. I went back to see Nurse Patricia about 2 months after I was discharged. I brought flowers, ones she could actually keep at the nurse's station, non-allergenic, yellow. I told her I wanted her to know what had happened, how things had turned out. She hugged me. She said she had thought about me. I asked her once more what my mother had sounded like on that call. Patricia thought about it for a moment and said, "She didn't sound like a bad person. She sounded like someone who had spent so long deciding what was urgent and what could wait that she'd lost the ability to tell the difference." I thought about that for a long time. I think that is true. I think that is the saddest and most accurate thing anyone has ever said about my mother. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't indifferent. She had just, over many years, built a system for deciding whose needs came first. And Dana was always at the top of it, and she had applied that system on October 14th without stopping to look at what she was applying it to. And I had spent 31 years being at the bottom of that system, quietly, because I told myself I was fine, because I was capable and self-sufficient, and I didn't need as much as Dana did, because asking for less felt like a virtue. The thing I know now that I did not know before, the thing I want you to hear, if you are listening to this and recognizing yourself in any part of it, is that needing less does not mean deserving less. Those are two completely different things, and the people who love you correctly will understand the difference without being told. You are allowed to update your emergency contacts. You are allowed to let the people who actually show up be the people your life is organized around. You are allowed to stop subsidizing the people who only call when they need something and go quiet when you need them back. The crystal paperweight sits on my desk at work. I look at it sometimes when I'm having a hard day. It reminds me that the night I said the quiet part out loud in a room full of people, the world did not end. My career did not end. My life did not end. What ended was a version of myself who had been waiting, patiently and silently, for the people she loved to love her back the same way. That version of me was exhausted. She deserved to rest. I think she is resting now.